Hello and welcome to episode 54 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. To commemorate episode 54, I must ask the immortal question, Car 54, where are you? With that old television joke out of the way, let's get to some news. We're going to start with some street racing news. Steve Phelps, president of NASCAR, did an interview on Racer.com, like in the description, and in it he talks about a number of things, including how many other cities have approached NASCAR about the possibility of a street race, and he actually had a really good response, in my opinion. According to Phelps, quote, "I don't know what our 2024 schedule is going to look like, but it's going to have more changes in it for sure. Until such time as the fan base says enough, we're going to continue to drive change throughout our industry. It's change that really either delivers a better product or brings it to a market where there's significant demand for our racing. Since we announced the Chicago Street Course, the number of cities that have reached out to NASCAR is significant, saying, quote, hey, we would like to have a street race with NASCAR. Now, we're certainly going to wait to see how this first street course goes before we would make any commitments anywhere else. It's going to continue to evolve in terms of what the schedule looks like, but in general, I think what you've seen is a result of schedule variation, what we do from diversity, equality, inclusion standpoint, or any number of the other changes that are happening within the sport. They're bringing a relevance gain in the overall population of this country and around the world. Now, I like Phelps' approach here. He literally just said what I've been saying since I first heard about the possible expansion. We don't know for sure this is going to work. We don't know for sure if the fans are going to like it or not. So we're not committing anything until after the experiment has been held. I like that. I still do not understand, however, the logic of other cities wanting to host a street race before the experiment has even been completed. Again, it's going to cause major problems in the Chicago area, downtown area. That's not even up for debate, especially because you're killing off a huge part of Lakeshore Drive, which if you're not from Chicago, it's not a small thoroughfare. It's a major artery. You're going to kill off a decent chunk of it. That's going to cause nothing but gripes and headaches, and it's going to piss off the citizens. You've got all sorts of other problems that are either not being addressed, or if they are, it's just sort of we'll see how it goes. Now, look at what happened with Nashville. Now, Nashville, the Music City Grand Prix, has been nothing but problematic. I think it's on the calendar for 2023. I don't know why. The racing was at best. But the other thing is, and I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but the racing market is not as hot as it once was, and it'll never change. The 90s racing boom is over. And again, I don't get the logic of holding a secondary street race when saying, hey, the street race is a good idea. You haven't had it, it hasn't happened yet. It could go as bad as the Music City Grand Prix, and it can go worse. Don't spike the ball before the end zone, guys. Why would you be interested in taking up a secondary experiment when the primary experiment hasn't happened yet? I don't get this logic, and I don't think I ever will. But there's another reason why I'm concerned, and I think I've discussed this before, but I'll say it again. Fans are not as tolerant of bad races anymore. And the Chicago Street Race will end up facing the same scrutiny as every other experiment in racing. If it fails, I won't be surprised. I want it to succeed, but I don't think it will. And I know I have been critical of the race and have at length discussed issues that could derail its success, but none of what I've been talking about in terms of concerns have been addressed even remotely. Not even solved, mind you, discussed by anyone who should be discussing this. It's almost as if they're waiting until the last minute to fix these issues. And I can guarantee you, this is Chicago. That's an approach they're going to take. The clock is beginning to tick. And you don't know how much longer. You have a limited amount of time to get this stuff done, is what I'm trying to say. And based on the current rate that the work is going, I don't see it getting finished in time. I'm not optimistic. I'm being realistic. And there's a major difference between the two. Optimistic is thinking that all the problems are going to be solved and everyone's going to be singing Kumbaya and we're all going to be happy. My approach is these problems exist, they're not going away, and they need to be solved sooner rather than later. As my sister calls me at an ill-opportune time. But yeah, as I was saying, I don't see the race working out well. I want it to. I just don't think it will. Now we're going to go to Formula One. I'm going to give them some praise because they made a decision. They made a decision recently that while it was the right decision, it was sort of the only option they had. The Chinese Grand Prix, which was expected to take place in Shanghai on April 16th, has been canceled. Due to the country's poor record in dealing with the pandemic, Formula One had no choice but to cancel the event. And I'm going to take this next part straight from CNN, link in the description. Quote, the country's strict COVID-19 protocols have left F1, quote-unquote, assessing alternative options for the fourth race of the 2023 season. Formula One can confirm, following dialogue with the promoter and relevant authorities, that the 2023 Chinese Grand Prix will not take place due to the ongoing difficulties presented by the COVID-19 situation, the statement said. They added that an update on an alternative location would be provided in due course. Now, if you're not watching the news in recent weeks or even recent months, I highly would suggest going to CNN and looking at the way China is handling the pandemic. It's not going well. You have some countries that are handling it well, some are just awful. I think China might be the worst of all the major countries. Of the at least the G20, I think they are the worst in the way they're handling the pandemic. Because it's almost as bad as when it started back in 2020, if you remember that. There's outbreaks, there's a lot of, I don't know if you would call it, it's basically the way that they're doing it isn't working, but they can't seem to figure out a better way to do it. It's basically like everybody has to stay indoors, everybody has to stay at home. You're basically, the lockdown, I don't think it ever went away, unlike here. So it's just a terrible situation all around. Now, given everything that has come out in recent months about how China's handling the pandemic, this was the best possible move. And F1 had no other choice here. I'm not ruling out another race being added, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to get one at this stage. Now again, I could be wrong, but I don't think they're going to try to bring something together, especially when you're holding 23 other races over several different continents. I think taking one out and just letting the teams get some downtime, especially given the amount of travel and work they have to do, I think that would be the best move. And I think if they do, and I've said this before, if you're going to add in another event, the two best countries to have it would be Britain or Italy, because they have two of the biggest and most dedicated Formula One fan bases I mean, you would be very safe to do one in Europe, but Britain and Italy, two of Formula One's home countries, absolutely would be the best move. I also don't get why F1's having three separate races in the United States. Because, again, people are saying, oh, well, Formula One is doing well in the U.S. and their TV ratings and blah, 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 blah. Look, they averaged 1.5 million per telecast, which is about what Formula One, which is about what IndyCar was doing. So it's not like it's this metamorphosis. And number two, we've talked about the Formula One fans and the elitists. And again, go watch Slapshoes' elitist Formula One video. I think it's, oh, excuse me, I think it's Black Flags Matter. My bad. Black Flags Matter did a very well thought out piece on why Formula One's elitism will never Formula One will never truly succeed in America because we're not an elitist country, and Formula One is elitist when it comes to auto racing. It's just that simple. But they're trying to get a foothold in the U.S. market. Three separate races, I think, is a bit too much. Okay, so I've ranted enough about that. We're gonna go take a break, and then I'm gonna talk about a story that I can't not share with you guys. So I'll be right back. And we're back. Now, as regular listeners know, I've discussed certain habits that the younger generation possess that are detrimental, to say the least. Now, I bring this up because I have a friend who works in an office setting not far from where I both live and work. He told me that he had to fire a coworker for incompetence. And as one thing led to another, it turns out that she was a former coworker of mine who also got fired. So I've been given permission to tell this story, so I will. So I'm going to name this woman Cinnamon for the rest of this story. I think you'll understand why by the time I'm done. Now, she used to work at the store that I worked at, and she was hired, I want to say, about 7 or 8 years ago as a cashier. Now, she embodies every millennial trait that just annoys, that is just not only annoying but detrimental at work. She was spoiled, self-centered, selfish, lazy, whiny, and moreover dumb. She grew up in an environment where the adults and everyone around her was invested in her success and would do everything they could to help her. She tried to be cunning but was too dumb to do so, and she made it clear she was only there for the paycheck and that the work was just little more than an annoyance to her. Within the first few weeks of her employment, literally everyone in our department couldn't stand her. Now, one of her most irritating traits was her willingness to throw anyone and everyone under the bus to do work that she felt she was too important to do. Now, early on during employment, this brought her into conflict with me and my supervisor, who I will, for the purposes of this story, name Karen. Now, this is not meant to be an insult, because Karen was on our side, because she expected you to work when you clocked in. You clocked in, you worked for your shift, and then you clock out. I never really had a problem with her. I really didn't. I was there to work, and so we got along well. Karen and Cinnamon were at each other's throats all the time. But the thing is, since Karen is a boss and Cinnamon was a subordinate, Karen won every single time. It wasn't even like It wasn't even like she had a chance. So she lasted 6 months. I have no idea how. By the time the end of the 6 months came around, the entire store, including customers, were sick of her. Everyone hated her, from the store director to the new hires. But there was a problem. And that problem was, while she was annoying, lazy, and disrespectful to anyone she came across, she really didn't do anything that could have gotten her fired. She's not good, but she hadn't done anything really bad to lose her job. We were so sick of her, but there was nothing that could have been done, and we had to learn to live with her. But then the fateful day came. Just at the beginning of her 7th month. One night I come up to the break room, I hear muffled talking, and I see the store director manager's door is closed, but he's obviously inside of it, which is never a good sign. So as I just walked by, I sat down and I was having lunch before my shift, and as I'm eating, the door opens, Cinnamon runs out, completely hysterically crying, goes to her locker, grabs all her stuff, and leaves. Now, there's about 6 or 7 of us in the break room, and we're all watching this. And the entire time Cinnamon is running to her locker and hysterically crying, the store director is yelling at her. Just completely enraged. Like, I don't even think enraged is strong enough. It's beyond enraged. So she leaves, he goes back to his office and slams the door. We're all looking at each other like, what the hell just happened? Because we didn't know. Well, as does happen, eventually the truth came out. So apparently, the day that she'd gotten yelled at and we'd witnessed the screaming incident, she'd been fired for stealing $200 out of the till at work. Now, she thought that she could arrange herself in such a way that the camera wouldn't catch her. What she failed to realize is that there's a series of cameras that are so good you can literally see the dates on the dimes in the cash register. So she ends up getting caught and got fired. I don't know if she was ever prosecuted. I really don't. I don't know if she was ever prosecuted, though I did later learn that at around the same time she was working with us, she's working a second job at a coffee shop and was fired for the same thing. So after being fired from at least another retail job for theft and dropping out of high school, Cinnamon was hired by my aforementioned friend's company to work as a shredder. Basically, all she had to do was sit in a chair for 8 hours a day and put pieces of paper into an industrial shredder. Now, not gonna lie, that's the kind of job I'd like. Just getting paid to just sit around and put stuff in a shredder. I'll take that job right now. Now, you would think that this wouldn't be an easy job to mess up. But, Cinnamon being Cinnamon, she found a way. Apparently, in the 2 months of her working there, she managed to spend twice as much time on her phone than she did actually shredding. After multiple warnings, as well as her terrible and self-centered attitude, the last time she got caught, she had to be fired. And you know what? I bring this up because this is a piece of advice that people need to hear. There are some people in life who are in dire circumstances through zero fault of their own. You know, you're a good person and you get cancer, or you get in a car accident, or something out of your control happens and it causes you to be in a bad spot. You know what? It sucks, but it's life. It happens. Other people are a disaster because of their own actions. And Cinnamon is one such person. Cinnamon has dug her own grave multiple times, and her failures are her own fault. She is now pretty much unemployable being fired from every job she's ever had for either incompetence or theft. She's unemployable. And everyone thinks that, everybody deserves a second chance. No, they don't. There are some people out there who shouldn't get a second chance because they're never gonna change. And you need to be cognizant of these people. Because if you have one of these people in your life, they're going to come to you at some point asking for help. The worst mistake you can make is helping them out. Because if they're never going to change, they're never going to change, and all you're doing is wasting your time, your effort, and your resources on them. I understand that these could be a lifelong friend. I understand they could be a family member, but they're going to drag you down. I can promise you they're going to drag you down. They will never take responsibilities for their actions. They will never make any attempts to change, even if forced. Even if you're forced to change. Some people just won't change. These are the kind of people, again, let them go. I know it's going to hurt. I know you're going to feel sad. Believe me, I understand. I've had to do it with quite a few people in my life. But they're going to drag you down. Don't let them. Okay, with that bummer of an episode out of the way, episode 54 is officially over. Next week, I'm going to try to do a few things. I'm not 100% sure how they're going to go, but we'll see how it goes. I'm Dave Farsley, and if you like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with episode 55.